Pain in my heart. In review.
Murray, one small thing.
Yeah.
When you bring me out, can you introduce me as Joker?
Hey everybody, welcome to the next episode of Integral Review. This is episode 8. We are reviewing the Joker today. I got my buddy Aljoša here with me. I am David Long.
Even though it's been out for quite a while now, but I feel like it's so relevant to the times we live in. I think it's important for us to do a review. What do you think?
I totally agree, man. I think this movie is a masterpiece. Spoilers, by the way.
So anybody who didn't watch the movie, don't watch this review.
Yeah, go watch this movie. You are going to really like it. I think this movie is good on so many levels, man. It's got beautiful cinematography. The music really sets the tone. It's got some beautiful shots in this thing. It works on so many multiple levels. Such an amazing film.
Every frame you basically... If you press spacebar, almost every frame is like a photography. And there's a lot of symbolisms, a lot of themes.
Yeah.
Because I know a few people here like themes. Also, the main theme of the movie, which I saw as a criticism of our modern culture and neoliberalism, it took me a few days to actually process it, to realize, holy shit, this movie is a freaking masterpiece, right? And like you said, it works on so many levels, but you almost gotta backward rationalize, at least for me, to really get, oh my god, there's so many layers. So I think it's also a movie that one could see like 2, 3, 4 times and still probably wouldn't get all the subtleties and symbolisms and so on. So I think, again, it's a great movie and I had a lot of fun,
Yeah, I think they could do whole classes on this thing from so many perspectives. The determinism element, the nihilism element, this order versus chaos thing going on. Like you said, there's Marxist versus capitalistic kind of theme in there. There's also this piece about perception of reality, people just going through the motions versus people being awake and actually experiencing what's going on. Kind of like general insensitivity, meanness of people, kind of cold, disconnected in their own world kind of a thing. This kind of comedy versus tragedy as a major theme and the interplay between those two. Comedy as a defense mechanism as well. Comedy as a shield and a way to try to block your emotions, and this idea of putting on a happy face even when you feel terrible.
Too many themes, man.
There's too many themes and they all interweave through this whole thing. One of the things I really like too as another theme is this idea of his personal tragedy and his personal story and all this terrible stuff that's happening to him. He is a product of his time, of his zeitgeist, and he does end up being this political figure, but to him he's not political. He's just this chaos monster that the system has produced coming back and giving the system what it deserves.
So let's just start with how the movie begins. So the movie basically begins with the Joker being in the makeup room, putting on makeup, and he's listening to the radio. There's like problems in the world, 10,000 pounds of trash piling up, affecting business, and then the problem about the rats. And the movie already kind of starts with the criticism of our society, right? It really sets us the tone about what this movie is gonna be. Then goes to the goofy clown music and him being on the street, dancing and pretending to be happy. And I think that's like a great kind of symbolism of how people feel their jobs are. The capitalism kind of forces you to be happy at your job. So it's like this fake happiness that you gotta pretend, oh, you're happy, you bring joy to the world, but it all feels kind of fake.
And worse than that, this clown aspect too, it like turns you into a clown. It makes you into this sad like joke at your expense. That's kind of how it feels like for him. And there's definitely this theme throughout where it's like Thomas Wayne, he says, to us, you'll just be a bunch of clowns. And the guy at the gate, he says, you know, you're making a fool of yourself. This idea of being the butt of the joke, how basically society turns the lesser thans into this butt of the joke. Even though they're a sad and tragic figure, we all laugh at them. So this really kind of sets the tone of this like Marxist type of class struggle and what capitalism does to people.
When Jordan Peterson wrote 12 Rules for Life, right? If he saw this movie, I do wonder what his interpretation would be, because I do feel like this movie is kind of like anti-Jordan Peterson's book. I have nothing against cleaning your own room, but at the same time, you can, and this is something we did in the Jordan Peterson book review, right? But I think this movie kind of points out the problem with how just cleaning up your room is not enough. Because usually when you have people, in this case in America, like school shooters, which is popular hobby in America, those people just don't come out of nowhere deciding one day, oh, I'm just gonna start shooting people in school, right? They come out of, I mean, based on how much is happening, it almost feels like, oh, what do you do for a hobby in America? Oh, no, shoot people in schools. What movie kind of tries to tell you is that the school shooter is just an end to a very series of unfortunate events. Usually people just see the shooting and everybody drama, oh, he's such a bad person, blah, 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 but nobody sees what's happening behind the scene.
There's also this order chaos aspect of it. The Joker is basically the embodiment of chaos. He's like the shadow monster, the thing that's been created by all these forces like pushing down and basically all these terrible things happening to him. So there's the deterministic element. He's a product of his circumstances. But also, like you're saying, because Jordan Peterson is an advocate for order and for capitalism, especially the way that it seems to be currently, it seems like the beast that he wants to keep away too is also nihilism, and he's afraid of the Joker, you might say. It's interesting to see the narrative from the other side, from the dark, forbidden side, where we can actually be sympathetic with that perspective and see the order is actually in a lot of ways very cold and unhuman and disconnected from reality. The kind of thing that makes you put on this happy face and smile when you feel like crying. And man, that is so powerful. Right in the beginning, after he gets beat down as a clown, we cut to that scene with him in his therapist's office laughing but crying. He won't let himself cry, and he's trying so hard to put on a happy face that it just comes out. He tries to express it as laughter, but it's clearly heartbroken, just crying. So powerful to watch that. And then to not even feel seen by his own therapist.
Social worker doesn't really do all that much, right? She's just saying, oh, do you have your diary? Do you have your notes? And she's just trying to listen to him. And there's this idea, oh, I'm gonna listen to him and everything's gonna be fine, right? Which is, again, almost like a mockery of social workers. And I'm not saying social workers are bad people in this case. I'm just saying that the system itself doesn't really give social work a lot of power, because we still live in this neoliberal idea of how every individual has their own free will and do as they please. So the way this movie tries to present the Joker in this case is that he is at fault, right? So the system is always saying, oh, you're the problem, right? We are okay. The system's perfect. You're using your free will wrong, right? And it almost makes a mockery of social workers in this case, because obviously social work is, I think, a very important job. So if you're a social worker, you're a joke, you're also a clown in a way.
Exactly. You're part of the same system of being exploited. They're in that position having to do this thing that they don't really want to do too. And I bet it's heavy to take on all the problems of all these people who are products of this broken system, to the point where when you see that there's really nothing even in place to really be able to help them or engage with them, it probably does make you become a little bit cold to the process, where you can't just let all these people in because they're not the minority, they're not the rare exception. It's like when you're in a war zone, you get numb to it, you know? That's one of the things he says too, like after he stops his laugh crying, he's like, isn't it getting like way worse out there? And she's like, yeah, it's really hard times, everybody's struggling. Probably meaning her too, you know? She's like a black woman in this very urban environment and in capitalism. So it's like we're all in the struggle. Like you said, she's in it too. She's a victim of this machine, and she's turned into a clown too.
I do feel like that social worker, she seems like a good person, right? But she knows that she's just a part of the system. She knows that she's a puppet and there's nothing she can do about it. So all she can do is give him the same old advice, make sure he's taking notes, pretending to listen to him, showing him what medicine to use. But at the end of the day, she's just doing what she can. He's probably not the only person she has, right? I mean, there are probably many lunatics she has to listen to. But she knows she's basically powerless, so she's trying to be kind of kind but also distant because she knows there's nothing she can do about it, because she's just a part of a wheel, but the wheel doesn't really care, so she can't care all that much either.
Yeah, it's broken inherently, so she's there doing her thing, but what can she really do?
Yeah,
Even
exactly.
her job is kind of a joke. It's getting defunded, right, was what we find out later, and the whole thing is just a tough joke. They pretend like they care, but they clearly don't. I actually think that train scene with the train going down, man, that shot was epic. The establishing shot. So they're on the train, and the little kid is turned backwards in his seat in front of him. It's interesting. There's like this theme of the childlike innocence of the Joker. Basically, the idea is that this is a person who is repressed and raised by his mother, and so he's slightly effeminate and kind of still a little kid in his mentality. He hasn't become a man yet. He hasn't really stepped into his own. Even like his joking around and trying to put on a happy face and make people smile is very much his childlike self. If you look at what he does with this kid, he's covering his face, being real serious and angry and taking that persona away, like these different masks, like it's all just a joke. That's his view on society. He's like, this is all just a joke. It's kind of great symbolism, actually. Oh, look at me, I'm so serious. I'm so angry. The mom turns around and she's like, stop bothering him. He's like, I actually wasn't bothering him, but he doesn't have emotional stability to be able to deal with the situation. He can't cry, so he laugh cries.
Yeah, he
like
actually
a crazy
shows her
person.
that paper that he has this laughing disease. He uses laughter. I don't know if this disease actually exists, I didn't check it out. But the idea is that there seems to be people who might start laughing instead of actually having their authentic emotions. So he gives her,
Yeah. This bus lady, she's another one of these drones who's like not perceiving things as they are and is like cold and cut off because she's tired and overworked. She's caught up in this system too. She's been made cold and bitter because of it. Because this stuff robs your humanity, she's probably tired and having to like take her kid to work, and she just wants the kid to sit down and be good. Like, there's no time for humanity and playing and being a child. All that stuff needs to be killed and destroyed and cut away and treated as if it's a problem. So to me, like, that scene in itself is really amazing in a lot of ways, showing and not telling, demonstrating what the different worldviews are and what the problem is and what the themes are. Like, do you see humanity? Do you see reality? Or have you become like a victim to the machine to where your humanity is stolen and you just become another heartless drone
I think
robot?
that kind of shows how the humanity in that city, but obviously humanity in real life as well, but in that city is just kind of stuck in their leadership jobs, being, like you said, drones, and they don't have time to enjoy the little moments, because that's a cute little moment, right? But you can't really enjoy it because you don't really care who that person is. He doesn't care who the Joker is. He's like, just shut the fuck up and let my son be alone. I don't have time for any kind of human connection. So again, kind of sets the atmosphere of how the lower class, how they function, right?
Yeah.
So after that, he goes home to his mother, and of course his mom is also an interesting character, to say the least. Hopeless mom hoping for Wayne, the father of the Batman. And I think this is another interesting kind of punch to capitalism, right? So she's basically hoping if Thomas Wayne knew what the kind of situation she was in, he would help. Wayne presents this false hope that capitalism gives people. So she was hoping capitalism's gonna save her, but capitalism really doesn't care.
What do you think he's gonna do?
It's gonna help us.
Why would he help us?
Because Thomas Wayne is a good man. If he knew how we were living, if he saw this place, it would make him sick. I can't explain it to you any better than that.
So I think Thomas Wayne kind of embodies the spirit of capitalism and neoliberalism, and she kind of embodies the spirit of this low-level worker and hoping that capitalism is gonna save her as well, but capitalism really doesn't give a shit. So this is how I interpret his mom in terms of her writing letters to Thomas Wayne. How did you interpret this? And how did you interpret her as a person in general?
It's a great metaphor. If you think of it like this generational thing, it's like you're saying Thomas Wayne represents capitalism at its height, at its most successful, and she's bought into this delusion. She's delusional. She's crazy. She believes in this fantasyland delusion. I know a lot of people's moms who are metaphorically like this. They have bought into this hard, and they have drunk the the Kool-Aid on what it means to be successful and what it means to be a good person, and they do not see what's going on in reality. We love our moms, and we're a lot of times raised by our moms, and we're taught all this BS about identity and like what's going on and how to be in the world. I think one of the other major themes in this thing is seeing your mom as delusional and being rejected by your different father figures and feeling like an orphan. I mean, every single scene is basically like he tries to be a human person and everyone around him just treats him like absolute garbage.
Because the movie is so dense, there are so many things going on there that we can basically go scene by scene and find all the symbolisms. I don't want to sort of waste time on so much depth, but we do realize that we're gonna probably even now miss a lot of symbolisms that this movie has. But I think the most important thing for us is to keep the main themes alive. So I hope we can do that.
Yeah, the storytelling is really good in this movie. Every scene is doing work. Every little bit has got some kind of symbolic meaning. We're definitely not going to catch it all because this film is one of those movies that you can watch over and over again and get more out of it. I'm sure this movie is going to be talked about in all different kinds of philosophy classes for years to come.
I mean, the idea of the Joker in original was that he didn't really have like a serious backstory. He was just like crazy from the get-go. Interesting how they use the Batman universe to kind of borrow. Joker is kind of great character to tell this more realistic kind of zeitgeist story and not just have Joker being some anarchist out of nowhere like the previous Batman.
It's a good character to really give that maleficent treatment to. I think one of the most amazing things about this movie is that by making this kind of character someone that you can feel compassionate for and relate to, it really gives people a window into themselves. And I think it can really help to open up your own compassion because we can all relate to feeling dehumanized in these ways. And we all know that if we were pushed far enough, that we would become the Joker. I like how it's called Joker and not the Joker because that is kind of the point. It's not about this one person. It's about how this kind of system and these kinds of situations produce the Joker. And this Joker archetype, this chaos, nihilistic, like, they deserve it, is in us all. We all have this sometimes where we're just like, you know what? They deserve it and they're going to get what they deserve. We can all relate to that. We've all been there. Maybe I am going to say too much here in saying this, but recently in my town, there was this cop who got shot, like assassinated at the police station. And my first thought was he probably fucking deserved it. This is what happens when you treat people like this. This is what happens when you walk around and you act like you have ultimate power and that you're going to get away with everything, that actually you push people too far to the point where they break and they don't care anymore. You're going to get what you deserve. And yeah, there's a part of me inside that would rather maniacally laugh and be like, fine, than like be able to feel compassion for this cop. I mean, of course, I can feel compassion for the cop as well because I also realize that he's a part of this system too and that there's this deterministic factor and that he's got loved ones. But that Joker voice is in there. And there's a lot of situations in everyone's human life where we are the Joker, that we have sympathy for the devil or whatever it is. We either relate to, are sympathetic to, or ourselves become
Well, I also
Joker.
had a friend who watched the movie and he said he saw a lot of him inside the movie, right? And I probably assume because the movie made $1 billion, because it was so successful, I can see myself in that character. You can see yourself, and pretty much everybody saw themselves in this character. So I think that the fact that the movie was so successful kind of tells us of how psychological zeitgeist is at this moment, right? This movie really kind of punched the bag right in the right place. Let's just continue. So then when he comes to his mom, right, they tell us that she's waiting for Thomas Wayne to help her. Obviously he's not gonna. And then they start watching the Robert De Niro show, the Murray Show, if you remember. And they were both watching it. Yeah. And then
setting up the father
he
figures.
started fantasizing about how he was on the show and De Niro kind of saw him. And then
My name's Arthur.
Oh, okay. Well, there's something special about you, Arthur, I could tell. Where you from?
I live right here in the city with my mother.
Okay, hold on. There's nothing funny about that. I lived with my mother before I made it. Just me and her. I'm that kid whose father went out for a pack of cigarettes, and he never came back.
I know what that's like, Murray. I've been the man of the house for as long as I can remember. I take good care of my mother. She always tells me to smile and put on a happy face.
You said, I think De Niro was kind of representing the father he never had from a psychoanalytic view, and the comic who also plays a Joker himself in a way by downplaying the social collapse. So I also think that Murray kind of represents this weird situation, because De Niro is also a Joker, but in a different way. He's like trying to make fun of these poor people who were unlucky, just to kind of make sure that people don't think this stuff is important. You know what I mean? It's like downplaying everything, right? If you have a rat problem like the super rats, let's just call the super cats.
So everybody's heard about the super rats that are in Gotham now, right? Well, today, the mayor said he has a solution. You ready for this? Super cats.
Right, something like that. It was a joke, right? So it's almost like De Niro has this pacifistic role to use comedy to really navigate people away from the real issues. So he was playing like this show host who was downplaying everything using comedy and blaming these poor people that they are poor because they are just stupid, not because it's a systemic problem. He kind of played the role of the pacifist comedian who's trying to downplay everything using comedy.
Right. Oh, I really like that, Alyosha. That's really wise. This kind of understanding of comedy as a defense mechanism to like steer away from the real problems versus comedy as this kind of harsh, bright light that reveals our nature or the problems with culture. Comedy is like that, right? It can be used as this sort of defensive deflection method, but it can also be a release valve and a way to shine light on some of our most human things. And so when people laugh, sometimes it's like a relief laugh, maybe even slightly an embarrassment kind of laugh. And of course, comedy is also used for ridicule. It can be very pointed to help people more align with the norms of society, and that can be kind of violent, but also to kind of punch up when people make jokes about Trump or something like that. It's a way of us trying to criticize public figures back into good behavior or something. Not that it would work with someone like him, but yeah, these different kind of approaches to comedy, and ultimately the more pointed comedy being advocated for by this film. Like, let's look at these dark, scary bits and not just be
I think it's kind of
afraid and
interesting
hide from
because
them.
when Ricky Gervais, he was the host of the last Golden Globe Awards, and his comedy was straight to the gods of the Hollywood, right? And he was basically just saying to all those rich people,
Apple roared into the TV game with a morning show, a superb drama about the importance of dignity and doing the right thing, made by a company that runs sweatshops in China. So, well, you say you woke, but the companies you work for, I mean, unbelievable. Apple, Amazon, Disney. If ISIS started a streaming service, you'd call your agent, wouldn't you? So, if you do win an award tonight, don't use it as a platform to make a political speech, right? You're in no position to lecture the public about anything. You know nothing about the real world. Most of you spent less time in school than Greta Thunberg. So, if you win, right, come up, accept your little award, thank your agent and your God. So,
De Niro kind of, in this movie, represented this stupid, arrogant TV host who's trying to downplay the problems of capitalism. But Ricky Gervais is exactly opposite to Robert De Niro in terms of kind of showing how things really are, right? So he was attacking all the Hollywood people. He was attacking Tim Cook, the Apple CEO, saying, why are you virtue signaling equality and all that nonsense? He was telling it how it is, and people loved it. But how did you saw this fantasy scene from Joker when De Niro put him on the stage and hugged him and says he loves him and stuff like that?
Okay, we got a big show tonight. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
That was great, Arthur. Thank you. I mean, I loved to hear what you had to say. It made my day.
Thanks, Murray.
You see all this, the lights, the show, the audience, all that stuff. I'd give it all up in a heartbeat to have a kid like you.
How did you interpret that?
In the light of what you're just saying now, it's like even that kind of is another version of him playing into this like whitewash delusion. Him and his mom watching it together. He's still in like delusion land, like believing that it's gonna all be okay. Later, when he sees that he becomes the butt of this joke, that's when he kind of deconstructs his father figure and realizes that he's using comedy like to lull people back to sleep. It sets it up pretty nicely where it's like, hey, you know, like this guy, he's not a loser. He still lives with his mommy, and like that, hey, I lived with my mom. It's like all this kind of, don't make fun of him. He's a good boy. He's there for his mom, and he's trying to make the world laugh and smile. Like this all like good-hearted, sweet seeming stuff. The reality of it is just the opposite. The dream actually exploits you and turns you into the butt of the joke, which is kind of the theme of this.
The director definitely knew what he was doing. I think it was a good way to use De Niro as a father figure. When Joker was watching De Niro, he kind of maybe liked him or not. At some point he realized De Niro is just a part of a system. He's being paid by the capitalists to downplay everything, right? But we'll get to that.
And this is also a theme in mythology. A certain point in an adult's life where you realize, okay, my mom is delusional. She's a crazy person. She doesn't even really see me or understand what's going on. And my dad is caught up in the system. He's just a pawn in this thing too. To deconstruct your father and your mother and to find your own way is like a part of what it is to be an adult. I really relate to this too myself because, I think part of even why I got into philosophy is because I wanted to know what was going on. I was looking for virtue. I was trying to find understanding, and there were a lot of these wise men who think that they knew what's going on. And I did learn from a lot of them, but I mean, like, look at the Ken Wilber thing, right? I love this guy. I learned a lot from him, but ultimately he lets me down. He disappoints me. He is just as caught up in the dish as everyone else. I think that's just a theme that your heroes let you down.
Because the same with me. I feel like my mom is delusional. My father is also kind of stuck in the system, and both of them can't really understand me. We kind of get along, but we know that we're not going to have deep philosophical conversations, or at least I know I'm not going to have them with them because they're just too stupid. They're just drones, right?
This is a different thing in terms of the zeitgeist of history. Like, never before has there been such a big generation gap in terms of IQ and lifestyle and values and all this kind of stuff. 100 years ago, families were close. It wasn't so extreme like this. We are really like the orphaned generation. You grow up and you think that your parents understand what's going on and you're going to believe in them and they're going to guide you, but then you get to a certain age and you're just like, these people are insane. They don't see what's happening. They don't know.
Even you and I are quite young, right? But even younger people, look at somebody like Greta Thunberg, right?
Absolutely.
She's a 16-year-old, now 17-year-old girl. And she needs to speak to the world that we need systemic changes about global warming and so on, right? So how does a child who's a 17-year-old feel, okay, why do we have a 17-year-old child teaching us what do we need to do? Like, how diluted can our system and the older generations be that a 17-year-old person needs to talk to them?
And even the media kind of treats her like, oh, isn't she cute? She becomes the clown a little bit. She gets treated like she's a clown by a lot of people. She's the butt of a lot of joke by people who don't want to act like this is a big deal. And she's like, are you kidding me? And they're like, oh, aren't you adorable? She's like, I'm not adorable. This is visual. Wake the fuck up.
So if you have 17-year-old girl preaching to the world, how far up are we? The older generation is now so brainwashed by the system they live in, they can't see the light anymore, right? So I think that we, the younger generation, and even us, but even younger generation, is gonna have a huge amounts of an anxiety when they actually realize that 60-year-old bald-headed white men don't know what the fuck they're doing, right? That's a huge freaking problem. So I think that a lot of younger people can become depressed when they realize that these politicians don't care. They just care about money, right? And it's dangerous.
The system is running so out of control. This kind of idea of a free market, like no one's controlling this thing. It in itself is like a chaos version of order. And it's not like there's anyone in charge you can appeal to. So everyone's just trying to get theirs. And it does feel like this kind of huge monolith, and it makes us all feel small and alone and unable to do anything about it. And it even like sells us fake ideas about the revolution. People are buying Time magazine or whatever with this Greta chick on the front. They're like, yeah, you want the revolution? Here, buy it here for $9.99.
She did a good example when he was buying Starbucks, how capitalism is like selling us this neoliberal ideology.
I remember 5-10 years ago, whenever you enter a Starbucks restaurant, you have big posters. We are ecologically conscious. 2 cents of every cup of tea goes to some stupid Guatemala Rohingya children, Somali orphans, to save this, to save that. This is the most ingenious ideological move that I can imagine. What's this operation? Usually we are divided between being consumerists and then, but we should take care that we are not just consumerists. We should also take care of Mother Earth, of society. Starbucks is offering you a wonderful solution, which is we will include into the price of your consumerism commodity also your social duty. So pay 20 cents more for cappuccino, and you did also, at the same time as being a consumerist, you did your duty towards society, and so on and so on.
And this is how ideology is sold. And like you said, the same thing with Greta. See, we put her as a person of the year. See, we can change. But it's just keep this neoliberal capitalistic propaganda just is moving on. Nothing's changing. It's just selling the change. But there's no change. It's so weird. Younger people are starting to realize this is all a hoax. And that's why we have this worldly instability. People demonstrating for the climate change, financial inequalities, and I think it's gonna get worse and worse, if I'm honest.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're the kind of person who gives up and doesn't care anymore to the point where, like, my life is so miserable, I would kill myself right now. Like, it's easy to flip over and be like, well, if I'm gonna kill myself anyways, let's go out with a bang. Let's take some of these other terrible, miserable that I hate down with me. Like that, you can see how people who especially feel like someone deserves to pay for this could flip over into Joker mode and become that. There have been times when I've fantasized about it, about going full Joker. I think we probably all have in our worst moments, feeling terrible, feeling like this is all totally up. This is terrible.
So then next scene,
let's do it.
Or one of the next scenes, and this is sort of where we have the gun control themes. So the friend gives him a gun because you need to protect yourself out there, right? Those kids stole your sign, they bashed you with it and so on. Dude, the world is dangerous. Here, have a freaking gun.
Take it. It's for you. You gotta protect yourself out there.
Obviously, this kind of touches the problem, which is more geared to America, obviously. I like this part because the way neoliberalism kind of works is, yeah, let's not change the system. I'm just gonna give you this gun and you just protect yourself, right? So again, is this false solution of, yeah, I'm just gonna give you a gun and everything's gonna be okay, right? Let's not change the system, let's just give you a gun. And I think it's, again, kind of how these poor people are so narrow-minded within the Joker story, and they are just like giving themselves some small things, will think that will help them. How did you interpret this scene when he gave him the gun to protect himself?
All the solutions are further traps, too. If you're poor, you can't fix the system, you get a gun, what happens? You shoot somebody with the gun, now you're in the system. Now you're in trouble. Now you're going to jail. Now you're a criminal. Like, well, what else choice did you have but to protect yourself? No one else was going to care.
When that big guy who gave him a gun made the joke when he said, if they call mini golf mini to him.
Do you people call it miniature golf, or is it just golf to you?
And then people were like laughing. And I think this kind of shows how in these lower ranks, between the poor people, this social Darwinism and disrespect among people thrives, right? When he belittled that dwarfy guy, not only are rich and poor divided, but even poor among the same job are also making fun of each other, right? So even they are divided in a way, at least in this kind of job.
Well, I think this is actually another version of humor. There's the social scale version of humor where you try to police social norms and pull down figures in power to a more appropriate level and put them in their place. There's like the social critique version of humor. But then on the more like personal side, the relief valve version of humor. There's also this initiation type of humor, especially that guys do, where we make fun of each other. And part of this is toughening each other up, kind of like dudes punching each other to like get tough. And part of the reason why you do that is because you're going to have to be tough, because life is really hard, is because the system is really hard. And this kind of bullying element is a part of comedy. You were in school, you probably
I had my
had people making fun of you, and like, so it's like one of the dynamics with that is the method that you develop, hopefully, if you are smart, is to never show anybody that they can hurt you or with their words, and hopefully have a clever retort back. Because it's the kids who get hurt by it and can't handle it and can't hang. These are the people that bullies target and make it real hard on them. So if you don't let these people hurt you, you can be skillful in maneuvering. If you can use humor as a tool, then you can develop your own strength and hold your own.
The way I kind of interpret that scene is, for me, when he was making fun of that small person, it's like, because he's a clown as well, right? He's just part of the system. Because he knows he's powerless versus the system, at least he's trying to be powerful somewhere, right? So he sort of makes fun of the little guy, so at least he feels like he has at least some power in his life, right? This is how I sort of interpret it. So even among poor people, there's gonna be hierarchies because they feel so powerless versus the system. They at least want to have some power within their little circle.
Yeah, it's the bully thing too, right? These people are clowns. They're probably a lot of people who've been bullied, right? And like you're saying, even amongst these groups, there's still this kind of power dynamic around the comedy thing. If you think about it, a joke is always at someone's expense. Almost always. Unless it's just like some clever wordplay thing, like, like punny dad jokes or something. But usually a joke has a butt. There's a butt of the joke. And even in those circles, there's going to be people who try to assert their power and try to feel good about themselves by trying to put other people down. It's an interesting rite of passage and level of maturity to know when to joke and when not to joke, and how to use joking as a way to develop friendships versus bully people.
I agree.
You know?
And then after that scene, he kind of went to the boss, and the boss couldn't believe that those kids at the beginning of the movie kind of stole his sign, right? And he didn't believe him, so he said, just give the sign back. So it was almost like he said to the Joker, why did you stole the sign? It's like he was so oblivious to the system that there might be kids who stole the sign. It was his fault, right?
It's that theme again.
Blindness to the systemic
of the
problem.
Unconscious people who don't see what's going on around them. Exactly, yeah.
Every freaking scene has a theme, right? And it kind of builds on it. So then he does his show at the pediatric home with little kids, and then his gun falls to the floor. Do you remember that part?
Yeah. It's interesting how he does his clown thing for kids a lot. The kid on the train gets like pointing to this theme of his own innocence, that he feels like he can actually be himself around these kids. That definitely seems to be a theme as well. But yeah, the dark side falls out in front of everybody. He feels exposed, and it ends up that he loses his job. One bad thing after another happens to this guy who's just trying to make it.
But then we have the famous train scene when you have three rich guys from rich families who are like harassing that lady, if you remember. And then because of his disease, and then they saw that as a threat to them, or that he was making fun of them because they were all rich and pompous and so on.
Right.
And then they attacked him.
I think that goes back to that. It's great if you're a comedian and you're on a stage and you can make people laugh, right? That's probably an amazing feeling. But one of the most scary things that we're all afraid of is the reverse of that, where it's like everybody's laughing at you.
Something funny, asshole? So, buddy, tell us what's so funny.
In some ways, like, they probably interpreted his laughter as he thought that they were a ridiculous joke, and then they felt insecure.
Yeah, I think that because they are so used to their high status, they maybe were offended by his laughing, right? Like, we are rich kids, we have higher privileges, how dare you laugh at us? Obviously, they were just some psychopaths, but
it also, I think, speaks to their insecurities too, right?
Yeah,
because they're bullies. This is another one of these themes, like you're saying, with the guy with the gun and with these people, is like there's all these bullies. Like, the system not only creates people who are cold and cut off, but it hurts people so bad that it turns people against each other. It turns people into bullies who will pick on the weak, because the system is also designed to turn people into these kinds of predators who prey on the weak without caring. Like you're saying, how the comedian was like, yeah, don't come up here and act like you don't have a bunch of people in sweatshops right now. You want to act like you have all these virtues and do virtue virtue signaling, but we all know what's really going on. So the system trains people to treat other people this way, to laugh at other people and make them the butt of the joke. It's like this dark underbelly. The Marxist critique of capitalism in this thing is like thick
totally
throughout.
So they attack him, and I think it was kind of interesting, a really bizarre kind of scene, almost like weirdly freaky, maybe not psychedelic, but I do remember when they were attacking him and they were singing something, and they were slowly starting to,
like the circus song,
something like that. I think it was a great scene. And then obviously they were started kicking him, and then he pulled out the gun. He was just trying to protect himself, and then he killed 2 on the spot, if I remember correctly, and the last one was kind of trying to run away, but then he knew he had to kill him because he's gonna tell, right? So he killed that last guy as well. I think it was a great scene. This was kind of the first time when he realized in a way that he felt good doing this. It felt right to him. And we're gonna get to that, but it's like he saw something new about himself.
Yeah, which is kind of the reversal, right? Instead of constantly being the one getting kicked, now he's actually having the feelings of power of being the one who's inflicting the damage as opposed to having it inflicted upon him.
Yeah, it kind of felt new to him.
And he goes and he dances in that bathroom once he's safe, and he kind of like revels in the bliss of his own power a little bit. It's like the first time that he gets a taste of his own power. And in terms of this story of a man trying to realize the delusions of his mother, deconstruct his father, and deal with overcoming the system, this moment where he takes his own power and sets things right, his own kind of like awakening into his manhood, and it really is the catalyst for everything that will follow. Every scene in this movie really shows why the Joker is the Joker.
This is another funny part. It's a small thing that I noticed when I was reviewing the movie. And after he killed them, obviously there was news all around the picture of clowns, right? And in his workplace, they were happy that some random clown killed people because they said, oh, this is good for business. So this is again another kind of fun and capitalistic view. It's like, oh yeah, so we're gonna even make more money because there's pictures of clowns on the streets. You probably didn't get that because it's a small part of the movie. Like just putting this subtleties in there. It's hard to spot unless you rewind it, because I did, and it's so interesting. Everything kind of clicks.
Yeah, when you watch this thing with the themes in mind, it is beautiful poetry. It is great storytelling. The archetypes are all doing their part and contributing. Really,
so after
it's really
that,
amazing.
He comes home, and then we see the interview of Thomas Wayne, and this is when you were saying at the beginning, he said that this clown was so afraid to even show his face, and he saw that as a sign of weakness, right? If he was a true man, he would show his face and show who he really is. And Thomas Wayne, being the rich person, making this false narrative as if his status of richness was deserved because he's a real man, but Arthur, the Joker, he's like weak because he's hiding behind the mask and killing people. Even though Thomas Wayne obviously knew those 3 kids, right? Because they were probably just some kids of his friends who were all rich, right? So he's basically delusional to his own rich people, and he just kind of, again, portraying poor as clowns, right? And those were so great people, you know, they were learning hard, they were bright young men, right? Because he doesn't know them. They probably work in some office.
It's the same thing with these cops who get shot. It's like a huge tragedy. We'll have a nice ceremony for them, and the whole city will come out. We'll name a street after them and all this bullshit. And the person who killed them must have just been a terrible person and a gang member and all that. That is not true. It probably is true that this cop is a douchebag. He probably does deserve it, and this other guy is probably this poor victim to terrible circumstances, and he was probably pushed to an edge to be able to be the kind of person who wants to do this. And he got killed. No one's naming streets after him and saying it's such a sad thing. It's like this other theme of patriots versus terrorists, or even like samurais versus ninjas. This archetypes on the system side versus the rebellion side. The samurais are kind of this person of honor, and yeah, they go through the front door, and it's all about how you do things. Whereas for the ninja, they wear a mask. They do things in secrecy. Yeah, in stealth. They'll sneak in the middle of the night and poison you while you're asleep, because it's not about how you do things, it's about getting it done. These different archetypes of the father who represents order and how he's delusional to what's actually going on in the world. Poor people are not just clowns.
Those of us who have made something of our lives will always look at those who haven't as nothing but clowns.
It's interesting because after he says this, lots of poor people identify with this archetype and take it up. And they say, we're clowns, people taking on the derogatory that they're being called.
You could put half of Trump supporters into what I call the basket of deplorables. The racist, sexist, homophobic, xenophobic, Islamophobic, you name it.
You know what's deplorable? Hillary Clinton viciously demonizing hard-working people like you.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message.
Our next guests are Trump supporters who are embracing the deplorable label. They even made their own T-shirts to prove it. Why did you do this? Stamp deplorable across your front.
Well, number one, it's fun, but we wanted to show that Trump supporters aren't deplorable. They're everyday people. We're moms. We're educated. We've had careers. We had children, we volunteered in their schools, their sports activities, and we wanted to show everybody that we're not deplorable, we're normal middle-class women.
You've embraced the label.
4 little words.
Such a nasty woman.
Thrown back into Donald Trump's face.
Get this, Donald. Nasty women are tough.
Hillary supporters put on their nasty T-shirts.
Nasty women are smart.
They put on their Make America Nasty Again hats.
And nasty women vote.
Then came the merchandise, from the Such a Nasty Woman throw pillow to the I'm with that nasty woman T-shirt.
Go to HillaryClinton.com and buy a limited edition Nasty Woman mug.
You've embraced the label.
I think the way it was portrayed is that people thought that Arthur killed them intentionally, as it was like his political statement. But it really wasn't. He was just some guy at the wrong place at the wrong time. And I think this is a good thing the movie did, right? Because you could easily go the other way and maybe, you know, because this would be like the SJW way. He would probably find some feminists here and there, and then he would fight for their cause. But I like the fact they didn't do that. He didn't have any political agenda. It was just all pure coincidence, right? Because they could have easily done it the other way and say, oh, he has a political agenda. And I think it's great that they didn't do that. So another props.
Right, I think so too. He's just a product of the system. He is the shadow monster coming up and fighting back, not because he's political or has some agenda or thinks he's going to do something, but just because to him it's the right thing to do in the moment.
Because he basically has no values or beliefs. He's just kind of going.
Speak truth and be
sees
honest.
Where the moment takes him. Because he has no structure.
Yeah.
He never had it, yeah.
Well, and he knows that all the people who represent the order side are just virtue signaling, and that they're all terrible bastards who don't really see what's going on and have a completely different view.
Then we have that elevator scene.
Okay.
I don't know if you remember. There was like this woman of color. Her name was Sophie. And she had a daughter. It was a fantasy at the end of the day. But do you remember when he was having a fantasy, having a romance relationship, and then he was like following her and she was okay with it? How did you interpret that part?
I think everything except for that first scene in the elevator is probably all fantasy.
He didn't even know her. Because at the later scenes when he comes to her apartment, she was like, oh, aren't you that guy from the other floor? What are you doing here, right? So all that was fantasy. Nothing was real. All that relationship he had.
He just was desperate for some kind of
that's how I
connection.
kind of into having some kind of love, having somebody to be there with him, because she was actually there when his mother was in a hospital. She was there when he was in that comedy club. So he had to have some kind of imaginary motherly, like not mother, because obviously his mother is crazy, right? But some warm, kind, feminine person who is really beside him. Although it was fantasy, but he needed that as well. So I think that was kind of what the director was trying to show us in his psychological world. Not only he wanted his father to love him and so on, he also wanted this like kind and sweet and healthy feminine figure he never had, right?
Yeah, this is one of the things that the media was afraid of too. You're appealing really hard to these angry white male incels, these people who can't get laid, basically, and they really thought that there was going to be, they predicted like a shooting.
I know there was some right-wing media who was afraid that this movie is going to inspire some shooting, which is weird. Why would it inspire shootings? Capitalism is perfect. Everything's fine. Why would they be afraid? You know what I mean? There's nothing to be afraid of. Capitalism is fine. Yeah.
Yeah, there's no problem. So
it's just a stupid movie.
It's a comment about our time and the kind of people we're creating. It's not trying to glorify violence, I don't think. The people who take it that way are probably missing the point of the movie.
So then after that we had I think another shot from the TV when Thomas Wayne was giving interview. He wanted to become a mayor of the city, and then he started to pretend he's gonna help because of his background and his reach, and he understands the situation, so he's gonna do everything to help put the city in order and help the poor people. So again, this kind of false narrative, rich people pretending that they're gonna help poor people, although he doesn't really care, right? So again, it's just kind of doubling down on this main narrative. So I think, and this is probably one of the most interesting scene in terms of psychoanalytic way of looking at it. Arthur then goes to his mom and he reads the letters, right? And he sees that Thomas is actually his father and so on. And then he goes to the Thomas Wayne residence. And this is where we meet Batman, Bruce Wayne. Do you remember that part? Yeah, so he comes there.
Yes.
And at the beginning, he tries to do like a magic trick. And I mean, there's so many kind of psychoanalytic things we can go on. For instance, the first thing is the gate, right? And I think this is kind of the gate that's like a no-go zone. He's like representing that the poor person. And then you have Bruce Wayne, who I think is also kind of like an archetype of the inner child of Thomas Wayne in a way, and how the inner child of Thomas Wayne is also locked up in this privatized land. You know what I mean? So I think this gate kind of represents this not only psychological gates, but also this physical gate.
Hi. What's your name?
I'm Bruce.
Bruce. I'm Arthur.
But even with this gate on, Arthur still tries to be like a good person, tries to make him laugh and so on. So how did you interpret that scene?
It's this kind of innocence in the middle on both sides. You have these extreme archetypes on the edges where you have the Joker and Batman, chaos versus the system. But in the middle, the thing that unites them both is this innocence and sort of inner child, right? Because it doesn't matter which side of the gate you're born on, it's going to turn you into this kind of a figure. So it's almost like anybody could become Batman or anybody could become the Joker if given the right circumstances. There's this kind of determinism theme of the system makes you, or society makes you into the person that you're going to become, and you're going to become what you're going to become based on life circumstances. But at the core, we're all just kind of dealing with our own inner child and our own kind of vulnerability.
Yeah, I think it's a great kind of metaphor of how even Bruce Wayne, how even he is shielded from the real world, right? Because he actually lives probably in privatized school system, privatized lands. So he really doesn't see the real world, right? So I think it's kind of beautiful representation.
Right. He just sees the world of order.
Sees this perfect world of order within the rich communities he lives in, right? It's interesting how rich people are actually kind of live in their own kind of real world, right? And Arthur has nothing to do there. And then obviously the guard immediately comes and protects the child.
And he tells him that he's looking like a fool.
Get away from that man.
It's okay, I'm a good guy.
What are you doing? Who are you?
I'm here to see Mr. Wayne.
Well, you shouldn't be speaking to his son. Do I need to call the police?
No, please. My mother's name is Penny Fleck. She used to work here years ago. Can you please tell Mr. Wayne I need to see him?
You're her son.
Yeah. Did you know her? I know about the two of them. She told me everything.
There's nothing to know. There is no them. Your mother was delusional. She was a sick woman.
Don't say that.
Just go. Before you make a fool of yourself.
Thomas Wayne is my father.
A fool is like another word for like a joker, a jester, this kind of butt of the joke. Every person, when it comes time to potentially show some humanity, he says your mom's crazy, she's delusional, and you're a fool. You're the butt of a joke. It's all a joke on you. Everyone keeps telling him that. He's just this clown, and not like a clown like even by his own deciding, you know what I mean? Like he wants to be a comedian, and people don't laugh at him for his intentional humor, but he's constantly stuck on the other side of it where he's the butt of the joke all the time, and it's terrible for him. It's interesting too, like in the comedy scenes where he's taking notes watching the other comedian, he laughs at all the wrong times, and then when other people laugh, he doesn't laugh.
So I'll tell you how I operate. I'm a professor at a prestigious New England university, and my wife is a senior in my Intro to Western Civ. I know. Why is she a senior in the intro? I didn't buy it either. So she comes to me during my office hours. It's Monday and Wednesday, 3 to 5. She says, "Excuse me, Professor Lewis. I can't use my real last name at this college because they don't hire Jews.
It's like he's on a whole different reality and perspective
Yeah, it's almost
than
like
the rest of these
because
other
he's so
people.
unhealthy and lives in such an opposite world. Yeah, he laughs at the wrong times because he's standing out. He's different because of his environment. So even your humor, in a way, can be totally different based on what kind of environment you live.
There's definitely such a thing as gallows humor, right? The humor that people who are deep in some terrible stuff will joke about. That's that release valve humor. Just to like lighten the load of this stuff a little bit and let some of the pressure off. Let's just make a joke about it. My good friend Kevin, he has his master's in applied ethics, and he wrote his master's thesis on the functions of humor and development. And so I'm pulling on a lot of stuff that I've learned from him in talking about some of this stuff, the different roles that humor plays. That's really interesting stuff. And it's fully explored in this movie. You get to see all these different versions of humor and all the different roles that it plays. The person who goes into humor, the sad clown archetype is the thing, you know, people who desperately want to make other people laugh. It can definitely be a defense mechanism. It can be a way to try to charm people and get them on your side, but it can also be a way to deflect and to make light of things and to not have to deal so hard. Like that's again, the difference between the Murray kind of character who uses humor as a shield and as a way to protect the status quo in this kind of defensive way versus the more pointed and critical kind of humor to refine. And humor is a very interesting thing. What other animals laugh too? It's very uniquely human in a way. What I learned was that one of the reasons that we laugh when monkeys and stuff like this play, they kind of do this like kind of thing, like to let each other know when they're fight playing with each other, like I'm not trying to kill you right now, I'm actually just playing with you. They think that that might be some of the origins of how we developed laughter. And there's also this like reward mechanism thing that happens when you get a joke. There's like a tiny chemical release in your mind that rewards you with this kind of laughter, and it can be like a way of being rewarded for figuring things out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it can totally make sense, yeah.
Jokes can actually reveal a lot of truth to people. It's like the power of like these meme reviews and stuff like that. Honestly, I think the meme reviews are actually really powerful because the way that you can kind of consolidate this idea into a crystallized form and speak truth to power and make kind of a joke of it. And it's maybe more powerful in some ways than trying to just talk about something straight. I think maybe the revolutionary comedian might be the most powerful archetype.
Maybe that's an archetype we need now. Who knows?
Yeah, I think so. I think Yassine Bey keeps trying to convince Dave Chappelle to run for president. Like, look, Trump got in. Way more people like you. Wouldn't that be amazing?
Yeah, I also
to have
heard that The Rock
Dave
was
Chappelle
thinking
as a
about
president?
it. I mean, at this point, why not, right? Yeah, the bar is so low.
The bar is so low
a
now,
movie
right?
star could get far. Maybe we'll touch the presidency and things that are happening now, maybe in another podcast. Let's just continue with the story. His mom gets heart attack. He's in front of home and he saw the ambulance taking her. And then when he's in front of the hospital, right? And this is another kind of criticism of capitalism. So even when everything goes down, even when his mom is almost dead, cops come in front of him and ask him about the subway killings after his mom had a stroke. So cops kind of represent the heartlessness of capitalism, right? We don't hear what's happening right now. We have this job to do to figure out maybe you had something to do with those killings and so on.
We spoke with your mother.
What did you say to her? Did you do this?
What?
No. We just asked her some questions. She got hysterical. Hyperventilating, collapsed, and hit her head pretty
the
hard.
doctor said she had a stroke.
We're sorry to hear about that. But like I said, I still have some questions for you.
And how did you interpret when those cops tried to ask them? Do you remember that part?
Cops are basically the one way to think of it is like the hand of the oppressor or arm of the law or whatever. Once things get bad for you and get even worse, if you're poor, if you're the lowest levels of society, the system will just scoop you up. Things like we're saying, he got this gun for self-defense, but even that becomes a trap because he winds up killing somebody and now he's in trouble. Even though he's defending himself, he's got too much mental issues to really be able to explain that or prove it. So the system's just going to scoop him up. Laws are just ideas that people write down until you put a uniform and a badge and a gun in someone's hand and make them go out into the world and act out those laws. So the cops probably represent, like you're saying, like the hands of the system kind of closing in around him to create more pressure on him.
cops, they don't necessarily care about the circumstances, right? Because cops are usually just stupid, they just do their job. They don't care what happened, how it got there, they're not thinking systemically of why this happened. Then he decides to find Thomas Wayne, and the way he does it is there's a charity event, ironically, where rich people gather. So it was like...
Wait a second, is that scene you were just talking about the one also where they ask him if his mental illness is real?
This condition of yours, the laughing, is it real? Some sort of clown thing.
A clown thing?
Yeah.
What do you think?
So he goes to leave and he walks into the door. Then he waves at it like it should have recognized him, like there should have been some kind of sensor up there.
It's exit only.
Talk about a metaphor for a lack of recognition and being fundamentally contrary to the system. A systematic lack of recognition. It's like they don't even believe that he's got issues. He must be faking it.
Well, because people are not trained. If everybody has, and this is very basic idea, but if people have free will, then obviously there's no such thing as mental problem, right? Why would somebody... So obviously all mental patients are just pretending they're mental patients. Obviously they're not really, because they have free will, because people usually don't think any further than that.
This kind of idea that people can they're just choosing it, or they should just be better, that the good people go to work and strive and succeed, and then some people, they just leech off the system, and really they're just like lazy, or they're not trying hard enough, or some crap like this.
So there was a charity event in some kind of a theater, right? And he kind of sneaks in because there's a lot of media and a lot of protests, then dresses as one of the guards, and then goes to the toilet. And this is where we have that scene when he, quote unquote, meets his father, although we don't know whether it's his father or not. And it's kind of interesting because it was in a very rich theater where only privileged rich people come, right? One thing that is kind of interesting is because the scene was in a toilet, the toilet kind of symbolizes that the only thing Arthur and Thomas have in common is they both have to piss and fish. Everything else is totally different, right? So it's kind of interesting that they have their kind of a scene in the toilet. How did you interpret when Arthur first meets Thomas Wayne?
That's really good, man. That's a good bit of symbolism. Yeah, that both meet in this common place where we all piss and fish. We're all animals. He meets him there and he basically treats him like garbage. He's like, your mom was crazy, stay away from me. He's like, if you ever touch my son again, I'll kill you.
Do you want an autograph or something?
No. My name is Arthur. Penny Fleck is my mother.
Jesus. You're the guy that came to my house yesterday.
Yes. I'm sorry I just showed up, but my mother told me everything, and I had to talk to you.
Look, pal, I'm not your father. What's wrong with you?
Look at us. I think you are.
Well, that's impossible. Because you're adopted, and I never slept with your mother.
What
do you want from me, money?
No, I wasn't adopted.
She never told you?
Told me what?
Your mother adopted you while she was working for us.
That's not true.
And she was arrested and committed to Arkham State Hospital when you were just a little boy.
Why are you saying this? I don't need you to tell me lies. I know it seems strange. I don't mean to make you uncomfortable. I don't know why everyone is so rude. I don't know why you are. I don't want anything from you. Maybe a little bit of warmth. Maybe a hug, Dad. How about just a little bit of decency? What is it with you people? You say that stuff to my mother?
She's crazy. You think this is funny? Touch my son again, and I'll kill you.
He was so pompous, so full of himself that he just thought, oh, because I'm so famous, maybe this freak here wants an autograph or something.
It's a really powerful scene, that moment when he meets this guy who he thinks is his dad, and this guy totally uncaringly just shatters his whole way of thinking, almost with an air of disgust, like your mom is just some crazy person, and she was probably like a potential bother to him. When he talked to the guy at the gate and he told him who his mom was, the guy at the gate knew. It's like, oh, this is this crazy person who caused him a bunch of trouble. You're that kid. So it's like, he knew already. The mom says something while she's in the tub, like, if he knew we were in this situation, he would not like it. He would get us out. It's like, no, he wouldn't. He thinks you're disgusting. He doesn't even care. Like, he knows you're in this situation and he doesn't care. Yeah, talk about being disowned by your father. Thomas Wayne is also a representation of the system. So it's about being disowned owned by the system too. Like, the system does not care about you. No one's coming to save you. You have no father. You're an orphan. You're just gonna get eaten up by this thing, chewed up and spit out, and there's no savior. No one's coming, and in fact, if you come around me and my family again, I'll kill you.
Yeah, and also like how when he was pretending to be a guard, when there were these rich people laughing, it was like some kind of a cinema or something, and there's protests outside, right? And you have these rich people just staring at the screen, looking the other way. So again, it was like this nice metaphor how
Just
rich
out of
people
touch.
just run away in their own little safe places and just laugh.
They only care about them and theirs, and they're content to just ignore all the terrible things that are happening in the world because they've got theirs. And this is what capitalism does to people. Like, this narrative of like this Darwinian thing where the inherent idea is that there will always be haves and have-nots. There will always be winners and losers because part of nature is that you got to struggle to survive, right? It's like survival of the fittest. So that means we're all gonna fight each other. It's gonna be tooth and claw. There's gonna be bullies. People are gonna be mean to you, and if you're gonna make it, the world is going to either kick your ass or you're going to become tough and kick some ass yourself. That's pretty much the world the Joker lives in. So you're either going to be the victim or you're going to be the victimizer.
Yeah, I think it was kind of great, again, metaphorical kind of way how they represent these issues, and again, how rich are kind of, they don't care. They just want to be stuck in their own little world, staring at the screen and don't look at the poor people. Just don't think about it. So after that, he kind of goes home and then he has that famous phone call. So in between the scenes, we kind of forgot that his video became viral. Obviously, this happens in the Gotham City where internet is not there yet, so I guess somebody took the home cam or whatever, right? And he put the tape to the Murray Show, and then Murray Show kind of played it off.
And finally, in a world where everyone thinks they could do my job, check out this guy.
When I was a little boy and told people I was going to be a comedian, everyone laughed at me. Well, no one's laughing now.
You can say that again, pal.
And people really like him, right? So they find him and the system calls them and says, hey, Arthur.
Well, as I was saying, we've gotten a lot of calls about your clip, amazing responses. And Murray asked if I would reach out to you to see if you would come on as his guest.
He kind of thinks about it.
Murray wants me on the Murray Franklin Show?
Yeah, isn't that great? He'd love to talk to you, maybe do some of your act. Does that sound good to you?
And then he says yes.
Yeah, that sounds great.
So how did you see that part?
Yeah, this is the part where he actually gets to be featured on his second Dream Fathers show, and instead of getting the happy and warm and sweet kind of reception that he thought he was, again, he's the butt of the joke and everyone's laughing at him. And he knows that the reason why he's been invited on this show is so that way they can laugh at him some more and make him the object of ridicule. This is the beginning of the real end, right? So it's like he's starting to realize his mother is delusional, that his father is not who he said he is, that he's an orphan, and he's been laughed at and ridiculed and made the butt of the joke by the second father figure that he loved. He's fully an orphan at this point.
Yeah.
Nobody gives a f. Nobody's coming. Nobody cares. All your dreams are bullshit. Even your comedy dream is a laugh, is a joke. This is a man, he's tried to be human. He's tried to be a good guy, and at every turn, his humanity is yanked away from him and he becomes an object of ridicule. You know, it was through Kevin's study on humor that I learned what the word ridiculous means. For a long time, I thought that it meant that something is like silly or that it doesn't make logical sense or something like that. But like a kid who's being silly is not ridiculous. Trump is ridiculous. Ridiculous actually means worthy of ridicule. So when someone's being ridiculous is when they are doing something that's worth being criticized. They're using humor to ridicule him. What I'm saying is that they're criticizing him and making fun of him and turning him into the butt of the joke. So it's a very harsh version of humor.
After that, he goes to the psychiatric home to look on mom and to see what's going on. So this is kind of interesting themes. It's kind of, and this is kind of the theme of exploring your past. So who is his mother? Who is his father? So I think this is kind of opening up the nurture versus nature debate as well. So obviously I think the movie kind of tries to say it's both, right? But I think reading about his mother, about his past, there's a lot of like psychiatric, psychological themes. He gets this, he reads it fastly, and then it kind of shows a flashback of his mother. Some cop was asking asking her something. So I didn't even know, maybe you kind of figure it out, but at the end, was Thomas Wayne really his father or not? Because the movie doesn't kind of answer that question. It does seem like he was having sex with her.
I think it does answer the question. Are you thinking that Thomas Wayne is the one who abused him?
He had sex with his mom. He probably abused her, raped her, whatever.
This is not what I got. What I thought happened is that he was adopted and that she had boyfriends who would
he was adopted.
And tie him to a radiator. And she just delusional, and she turned a blind eye because she couldn't deal with the fact that it was happening. So she just pretended like it wasn't, which is her go-to method. And she did this to him too, where she would tell him not to look upset and to smile and to put on a happy face. And this is why instead of crying, he laughs, and he's always smiling whenever he gets into really uncomfortable situations, is because his mother has taught him to pretend like everything's okay. Because she's delusional, and that's what the system tries to teach you, right? And if you can't pretend like everything's okay, then you must be crazy.
That's a good
right?
interpretation, yeah.
So let's put you on drugs so that way you can go to work and pretend like everything's okay. Because that's what the system does, is it tries to dehumanize you and act like you're only sane if you go along with the bullshit. If you can't cope with the terrible things that are happening all around you, then you must be crazy.
Yeah, that's a great interpretation.
He used to tell me that my laugh was a condition, that there was something wrong with me. There isn't. That's the real me.
The conversation that he had with the guy behind the counter at that place seemed like one of the only genuine, real human interactions.
Yeah, that guy really looked like
anybody,
a kind, genuine guy who was, doing his job.
Sorry about that, my man. All records, 10 years older, they're still in the basement, and you're talking about something 30 years ago, so...
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
How does someone wind up in here? Have they all committed crimes?
Oh, yeah, some have. Some are just crazy, pose dangers to themselves and others. Some just got nowhere else to go. Don't know what to do,
Yeah, I hear you, brother. Sometimes I don't know what to do. Last time I ended up taking it out on some people, I thought it was going to bother me, but it really hasn't.
What's that?
I fucked up and did some bad shit. You know what I'm talking about. It's so hard to just try and be happy all the time.
Hey, listen, man, I'm just an administrative assistant. But you should see somebody. They got programs, city services, stuff like that.
Oh, yeah. They cut all those.
All right, here it is. Fleck. Penny Fleck. Let's see. Patient suffers from delusional psychosis and narcissistic personality disorder. Was found guilty of endangering the welfare of her own child. You said she's your mother? I'm sorry, man. Like I said, I can't release these records without proper forms. I could get in trouble. Look, if you want to bring your mom in here to sign, that'll be much easier, but I can't let this go without her signature, okay? Sorry.
He was really trying to be compassionate, again, within the constraints of the system, but yeah.
Within the constraints of the system and his job. And they actually had a very human interaction in relief to this actual final human moment that you get to see just how tough up the Joker actually is. Because of all the things that have happened to him, because he clearly is too far gone at this point and kind of crazy and probably does need some serious help. I've heard some interesting philosophical comparisons where this one guy was saying how this movie is about epistemology and the way that we view the world. He was saying that Joker was saying that he liked it better when he was in solitary confinement, and you see that shot of him banging his head against the wall, this idea of trying to get your mind and your body to come together, this kind of disassociation from reality. And then the moment where he kills the people, how that's the moment when he escapes to the bathroom and he's dancing. When he's dancing is when he feels the most grounded and alive, versus locked in this cell where he's just banging his head up against a wall trying to grasp reality. A lot of the themes in this thing are about trying to discover truth and trying to understand reality and see it how it actually is and actually engage in the world in a real and honest way, especially when everyone around you is caught up in a dream and cold and dead inside and delusional. It's the crazy person is the one who's somewhat awake in a world of dreamers and realizes how terrible things are.
And this goes perfectly then with the next scene where he basically goes to the hospital and he sees his mother there lying. And then I think this is kind of the character arc where he kind of transforms into the Joker character by killing his mother, suffocating her to death. And it's kind of weird because this dark moment for me kind of felt like when he did that, this is where authentic Joker kind of came in. So even though this is supposed to be a sad moment, oh no, he's killing his mom, in his character arc, this was actually a good thing because this is where I felt, okay, now he's becoming alive.
I haven't been happy 1 minute of my entire life. You know what's funny? You know what really makes me laugh? I used to think that my life was a tragedy. But now I realize it's a freaking comedy.
He can't go back to the illusion anymore. He's cutting himself off from this dream world and deciding to fully be awake, and he can never go back.
This is also when they shut down the social work center, so he was also off the medicine, right? I forgot about that part because in between they kind of shut down the social services to take out the funding. So he was even off the meds, and this is where he kind of started to become alive. He become more authentic. So after he kills his mother, then he goes to Sophie, then he goes to her apartment, and this is where we see it's actually a fantasy when she says, oh, what are you doing here? Aren't you that neighbor? Why don't you go down there? And then he says, I just wanted somebody to talk or something like that, which again kind of shows that all he really wants is just somebody to understand him, to love him. This is kind of my interpretation, if you remember that part. I just need somebody to like kind of sit with me, just be with me.
Right, like breaking from the delusion, wanting the real, and then like facing her, not as a fantasy, but just as wanting to face the reality of it. Let's get real from here on. I can't be like my mother. I want the real. That's why I can understand where this guy's coming from, who says that it's about epistemology and the search for truth and the search for the real. Yeah, you can really see it in these themes.
The next scene is in his apartment and he's looking at playback of the Murray show, so I assume he tape recorded that, right? And then he sees like this famous actor from that universe, and then he tries to imitate how he would approach Murray when they reveal him on live show. Do you remember that part?
Hey Murray, thanks so much for Hey Murray, thank you so much for having me on the show. It's been a lifelong dream of mine.
He was basically practicing.
Yeah.
Hey Murray, I've been on... I'm sorry, what's that? That's very funny, Murray. You know, I'm also a comedian. Would you like to hear a joke? Yeah? All of you? Okay. Knock, knock.
And this is kind of a funny thing, and this is symbolism I got, maybe you're gonna not agree, but basically, even though the system propped him up totally, right? Even though that happened, he still wanted to imitate the system and still wanted to behave like that rich actor who he was practicing on, right? So even though the system is so good at manipulating people that even when you're down, he's still trying to imitate the system so the system will accept him. Obviously, when he does come out for real, he does his own thing, but this is kind of how I got it. How did you see that reference?
Yeah, he's practicing, trying to have charisma, trying to be a likable person.
But by imitating the system, so somebody who's already likable within the system instead of actually being himself.
Right.
Although then he is himself, he doesn't imitate that guy. But that had he even tried, I think kind of shows how the system is so manipulative that even when the system kicks you down, you still wanna be part of the system.
The movie kind of does sort of a twist where when you see him practicing and he's setting it up, he's practicing to kill himself. He's still in this victim mentality, and it's written in his notebook earlier, something like he hopes his death makes more sense than his life. This kind of like, woe is me, I'm gonna kill myself. It's this sort of fantasy that a lot of people have when things are going so terrible and they just want out. Like, I'll just kill myself. Or like, what would everyone think if I killed myself? That's what a lot of it's behind behind that too. It's just like being so freaking desperate for some love and attention and some care, and the thought that other people don't care about you, that you want to make some kind of huge statement like nobody cares about me in some kind of desperate last attempt to get any kind of sympathy. People imagine other people hearing that they died and feeling sad or feeling some regret. It's just this kind of last attempt at sympathy. We've all felt that, at least when we were in high school.
I did feel that way a lot, yeah, so don't trigger me about that.
This movie is triggering as well.
Not everybody had this beautiful, privileged childhood like Bruce Wayne did. Although Bruce Wayne became Batman, so he probably had some of this as well. So after he's practicing, his friends come to cheer him up with alcohol. So again, this is kind of representing how you solve the problem of capitalism. Oh yeah, just get yourself drunk. Alcohol, drugs, weed, whatever, right? Don't think about the system. Just, buy this, drug yourself, forget about it.
Extract yourself.
And the big guy makes fun out of the small guy because the small guy was afraid, what if they get me? But then he said, if you were a midget, you would probably be in the jail right now. And then the big guy kind of said to Arthur, hey, about that gun thing, why did you tell the cops? And then Arthur just snapped and kills him with the scissors. How did you interpret that part?
Well, he thinks he's not his real friend is what it comes down to. And he's worried, and he didn't hold up his part because I think he also told the police something. He was so concerned what Joker was going to tell the cops about him and giving him the gun, but he already told the cops some stuff. He wasn't a good friend. He didn't stand up for him. He didn't have his back. And so he's a two-face. He's a liar. He pretends to be down with the clowns. He's in the pocket of the man, and he's playing along just like everyone else, also selling out his humanity for the system.
He didn't kill the small guy, right? He's like, you were always good to me. Sometimes these psychopaths do remember the good people. Not all psychopaths just kill for no reason. It's like, yeah, I remember you were always good to me.
Right.
You never said anything bad, right?
It's for a reason. These people he kills, they get what they deserve. That's the theme, right? His mom lied to him and let him be abused. She couldn't face the reality, and so she turned him into a monster. Even the people who were his friends betrayed him. Man, every single person in this man's life.
It's kind of interesting how every single character has a purpose, while in Star Wars, kind of almost the opposite. But obviously these are two different worlds. We can't really compare them.
This is a great film. This is a masterpiece. And Star Wars is a pop, bubblegum.
So then he goes to the show, but between him going there, he was like dancing, doing that stare thing, which was in the commercial. But then those cops come again. So the system is back, right? And then obviously the cops start chasing him. So he runs around and then they chase him. So this is kind of interesting, again, symbolism of where the system tries to capture you, right? But this time, this is kind of the first time where the system loses, because now there's many people in clown suits, so it's hard for the cops to recognize who's the real clown here or the Joker. And this is where kind of the cops or the system kind of loses a bit of its power. How did you interpret the chase scene?
Every single point is like another step to demonstrate his full-on turn into his own independence and his own expression of himself. So before, up until this moment, he has been hiding his true self from these cops and pretending like he's a good guy. He's just another one of these drone citizen type people. At this point, he's in full clown makeup. And there's no point in pretending anymore. He's not going to be able to face them and act like it's all good. He knows that they know, and now he's running from them. He's fully the Joker at this point, fully in his power, and now he's fully against the system.
Exactly. So after that, he manages to get away, and then he goes to the Murray show, and this is where Murray comes to his wardrobe, and this is when they actually meet for real, right? It's interesting because there's all this chaos outside the city because of the poor people protesting, so on. And then Murray asks, and this is something we touched on before, why are you in the Joker? You know what's happening out there, and are you doing this because you want to prove a point? And this is I think one of the most important parts of the movie. He says, no, I don't have any values, I don't stand for anything, I'm just dressed as a Joker because you told me I was a Joker at the beginning, if you remember that part. I guess he called him the Joker in the viral video.
Murray.
Hey, Mr. Franklin, buddy.
Come on, gee. That's all bullshit.
Thank you, Murray. I feel like I know you. I've been watching you forever.
Thank you. What's with the face? I mean, are you part of the protest? Or?
And I think this is important part.
No, I don't believe in any of that. I don't believe in anything. I just thought I'd be good for my act.
There's no political agenda here. The guy doesn't really have any values. He's hardly discovering who he is, right? And I think this is important part. So I think this is one thing that they had to do the right way. And I'm really glad he's not a right-winger or a left-winger. He's just some guy in the wrong place at the wrong time.
And that's in direct contrast to all these people who hold these high values and think of themselves in all these kinds of ways and have all these philosophies. He's just this nihilistic chaos monster. He doesn't care. He's to the point now where he just wants to make other people understand the pain.
And then
That's
Murray says to him, after he says he has no kind of agenda, and then he says,
A couple of rules, though. No cursing, no off-color material. We do a clean show. Okay?
It's kind of irony that he says, no cursing, no bad manners. Again, kind of shutting down, being critical to the system.
Any kind of darkness.
Yeah, just be polite, politically correct. System is perfect, right?
Right. Point of this show is just to make people laugh and feel good at the end of the night so that way they can go back to work in the morning. And don't rock the boat. Don't get too real. Don't show too much humanity. Let's just keep it light and silly and fun. And if anything, we're here to make fun of you.
So then the author says,
Murray, one small thing.
Yeah.
When you bring me out, can you introduce me as Joker?
So then they introduce him, he comes out the way he wants, so he kind of dances around. And this is kind of interesting. In the end of the movie, so this part with Murray, he becomes almost like kind of flamboyantly gayish kind of vibe, almost like this feminine, flamboyant kind of, almost like a gay character. This is kind of vibe I got. And this I feel like was the most authentic him, ironically.
Yeah, it's his inner child. He's fully in his childlike self at this point. He's kind of regressed. Maybe it's like a type of synthesis, right? Where he spent all this time being a clown in the past, dealing with children, trying to get in touch with this innocence. Yeah, now that he's this dark, scary Joker, he's like the hurt child coming back for revenge, kind of.
Well, that was quite an entrance.
Innocent, and his voice is like cute and playful, but he's clearly like hurt and broken in there. It's almost like he's flipped inside out at this point. Because, normal people, they have their innocent child, their vulnerable child at the sort of core of the onion, and then all of these layers of defense and all this stuff built up around it to protect it. But he doesn't care anymore. He's just free like a child. No more defenses, no more blocks, no more bullshit. Just this real person, this real vulnerable child who's gonna come out to play, but also tell you about how they're really hurt and not sugarcoat it.
So after that, Murray kind of starts asking him questions, and people start laughing at him because Murray is making fun of him and so on. And then he says, "Can I tell a joke?"
Knock, knock.
Who's there?
It's the police, ma'am. Your son's been hit by a drunk driver. He's dead.
No, you cannot joke about that.
Yeah, that's not funny, Arthur. That's not the kind of humor we do on this show.
Because it was a dirty joke, everybody was shocked. Like, oh, how dare he say such a dirty joke? But I think this is kind of the way of movie telling you that the whole society, it was not a dirty joke, it was a dark joke, like a dark humor joke. And I think this is the idea of the movie here, is that people were shocked because he said that dark joke without realizing that the whole system is a dark joke. System is just projecting its problems onto him. He's the problem, not the system. And this is kind of the way I kind of interpreted why people were shocked, because he said the dark joke.
In that world, that does seem to be the thing. That does seem to be the narrative. This is part of how he goes wrong. How he's like, well, if this is the kind of way that they're going to treat me, then I'm going to choose to go about it this way. Like where his morality flips from this delusional inside the system kind of way of thinking about things to this more like, you know what, I'm going to be the judge and the power in my life, and I'm going to be the one, because I don't trust my mom and I don't trust my dad, and I don't trust the system to decide for me anymore. And clearly they're violent and terrible.
This is kind of a subtle hint at what the movie is trying to say when he says, you, the audience, decide what is right and what is wrong. I think this is kind of the way of movie telling us we, as the small people, need to decide, do we want to have this capitalistic system or not?
All of you, the system that knows so much, you decide what's right or wrong.
So I think this was kind of a way of director saying, hey, I can't do anything about it, I can only make this movie, but you guys can decide. And I hope that you and I are doing part of it to wake the population up and to see that the whole system is corrupt. And this is kind of the way I think movie trying to kind of indirectly tell us, hey, you guys can decide how the system will work. and together maybe we can make a better place, right?
I think the only missing ingredient from this whole movie is religion. It's not just alcohol and guns, it's also religion. Like, if there would have been a religious delusional element to this thing, it would feel a lot more complete.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting choice.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that was intentional, to be honest. I'm pretty sure they were intentionally not putting the religion.
They want to make it appeal to a broader audience, and they don't want people to feel attacked even more. But yeah, it was more focused on a postmodern critique of modernism. But yeah, I think it would probably go a step further if it was like, yeah, also a lot of people turn to religion to try to like cope in some kind of delusional way.
I think they were more going to the psychoanalytic route and not necessarily a religious one, right? I'm sure that was a conscious decision.
It probably tightens up the message a little bit more too, but it's definitely a part of society is that people turn to religion as a coping mechanism as well. Like in the poorest communities, there's liquor stores and churches on every corner because people are desperate to go to these places to try and block out reality and believe that it's going to somehow be better or numb the pain or something like that. Nietzsche has this quote, I'm going to butcher it, I don't know what it is exactly, but basically, you know, if you want to be awake, the places to stay away from are bars and churches. That would have been a good additional element if it was trying to be a little bit more true to the zeitgeist as we're experiencing it. But the capitalistic criticisms are pretty good.
Yeah, so after that he kind of admits that he killed those 3 guys.
It's been a rough few weeks, Murray. Ever since I killed those 3 Wall Street guys.
Okay, I'm waiting for the punchline.
There's no punchline. It's not a joke.
Right, and then Murray kind of attacks him.
You're serious, aren't you? You're telling us you killed those 3 young men on the subway?
Mm-hmm.
And why should we believe you?
I got nothing left to lose. Nothing can hurt me anymore. My life is nothing but a comedy.
Well, let me get this straight. You think that killing those guys is funny?
I do. And I'm tired of pretending it's not.
Well, okay, I think I might understand that you did this to start a movement, to become a symbol.
Come on, Murray. Do I look like the kind of clown that could start a movement? I killed those guys because they were awful. Everybody is awful these days. It's enough to make anyone crazy. Oh, why is everybody so upset about these guys? If it was me dying on the sidewalk, you'd walk right over me. I pass you every day and you don't notice me. Have you seen what it's like out there, Murray? Do you ever actually leave the studio? Nobody's civil anymore. Nobody thinks what it's like to be the other guy. You think men like Thomas Wayne ever think what it's like to be someone like me? To be somebody but themselves? They don't. They think that we'll just sit there and take it like good little boys, that we won't werewolf and go wild.
Yeah.
And then he says that nobody's civil anymore and so on. And then Murray says back to him, well, you know, there are actually some decent kind of people. And then he says, but you're not one of them. You're not decent, right? And then Murray kind of attacks him back. And again, here kind of Murray represents the system while attacking him back, saying,
you finished? I mean, there's so much self-pity, Arthur. You sound like you're making excuses for killing those young men. Not everybody, and I'll tell you this, not everyone is awful.
You're awful, Murray.
Me? I'm awful? Oh yeah, how am I awful?
Playing my video, inviting me on the show. You just wanted to make fun of me. You're just like the rest of them.
You don't know the first thing about me, pal. Look what happened because of what you did, what it led to. There were riots out there. 2 policemen are in critical condition. You're laughing. You're laughing. Someone was killed today because of what you did.
I know. How about another joke, Murray?
No, I think we've had enough of your jokes.
This is the last time the system kind of tries to blame it back on him, right? Oh, this is just self-pity. Yeah, this is kind
just
of
feeling
Jordan
sorry
Peterson
for yourself
just
over
clean
there.
your room. Why are you blaming us, the system? We are okay.
Which is why I think he doesn't go the way of killing himself, because he was going there to do this big pity party. That was where he was going. But yeah, Murray really calls him out on it in this moment, like, oh, you're gonna come here, like, try to get us us to all feel sorry for you and like pity party. And this flips him over to being angry and to being like, you know what? You created this. You brought all this on yourself. And this is the defining moment.
What do you get?
I don't think so.
When you cross
I think
a
we're
mentally
done
ill
with
loner
this show.
with
That's
a
it.
society that abandons him and treats him like trash!
Call the police,
I'll
Gene.
tell you what you get!
Call the police.
You get what you flipping observe!
And it's amazing the idea that it's in public, that it's on this huge TV thing. And it's not only a defining moment for this character, but it's a defining moment on the cultural level because the person who admitted to kind of starting this larger movement also is now assassinating everyone's late night father on the air. It's a pretty amazing moment. Then afterwards, he goes out into the street and he's like kind of an underground cult hero. He becomes a symbol and an icon, and he already had become a symbol and an icon, but now it's solidified. And you could see how in the context of this world, in this narrative, you're like, this is how this person becomes the Joker, and this is how the Joker gets this major status in the city, because the Joker is actually kind of a hometown hero. You could see how not only is he a sympathetic archetype, but he's an archetype that resonates with lots and lots of people, because lots of people are in this kind of struggle, and given this kind of framing and this kind of context, yeah, the Joker is a powerful archetypal figure.
He even asks Murray, do you ever leave office? Then he says something about Thomas Wayne, and then Murray asks him, do you have a problem with Thomas Wayne? And which again proves kind of the point that Murray is actually just a rich people's clown who's trying to protect the system, like we said at the beginning. And the fact that it all happens live, when he kills Murray, he almost like in a way kills a part of the system. He kills like a collective father or something like that.
Yeah, like a collective father, because this is a guy who reads bedtime stories to all these kids. He's the late night pacifier bedtime story guy, and so yeah, he is kind of like a collective father figure.
Yeah, I think that's a good interpretation, yeah.
Represents justification of the system.
When he kills them, there's this pan out, and then there's many TV channels, you know, doing what the system does. Oh my god, he killed the guy, oh my god, he's a maniac. The usual shtick that the system does. Again, kind of even movie trying to show you that if this would happen in real life, this is how it would happen. Oh my god, he's a bad person. And again, it kind of tries to show us we can choose otherwise. We need to see behind the curtain of what's happening, not just see how media is trying to propagate it. Again, a lot of things this movie wants to teach us. So I hope people got a lot of it. They probably got the gist of it because, again, if it was such a success. So in the beginning of the movie, he said he would rather be in the institution, and in the end he was. Maybe he was there all along, or they were trying to symbolize that he was imagining the whole story, or that after he killed Murray, capitalism invested a lot more money to keep him locked up and continue with neoliberal propaganda. There are many ways you could interpret it, that ending when he was in that new psychiatric home that was a lot more white, everything was white. How did you interpret that part, that ending when he was dancing in that hallway, and before that he was talking with a social worker in this white institute?
It's interesting, like the way that some people can get comfortable with institutionalization. When you're this kind of person who can't function in the system as it is anymore, it can be a lot easier to just be in this kind of structured order where all the things are provided for you and you're around all these other people who are taking care of you in some kind of way, or some people can't cope. And yeah, maybe it makes sense that he's going back there for a while after he gets in trouble, but maybe it's also like, yeah, they're still making money off of him because prisons are privatized. Prisons are big business. They're making money off of the poor people no matter what. And so he gets scooped up into the system, but it's just going to make him more crazy. And now he's going to maybe recruit people, or he's going to escape. I mean, he always escapes, right? That's the thing.
Yeah, I mean, the ending kind of did let a lot of interpretations of how, whether it was an all illusion. I think probably wasn't. I think that he was just probably in a better institute after they captured him. And I think it's also fine that they ended the movie there, and it's like almost kind of led to the audience to decide, okay, what are we gonna do now? This can happen. He was like smiling there in his new prison, whatever it was, and it like tells you, okay, what are you gonna do about it now? Can we as a collective stand up and say no to this kind of way of the system functioning, all about profits, neoliberalism? It kind of hit all the right tones.
A lot of great themes. Like we said, we could probably talk about this thing for so long. It's very triggering. It's been again, a very powerful movie. It resonates with a lot of people. It brings up these archetypes and these themes that make us think about our relationship to life and our relationship to each other and how we treat each other and humanity and the state of the world and capitalism and the systems that we live in, mental health issues and
control and many subsystems and the problems and how we view people, psychology, psychoanalysis, nature versus nurture, so many themes and other themes.
It's an amazing masterpiece. And for it to be a comic movie, I haven't even wanted to watch a comic book movie in a long time. Like, I'm not really up on like Avengers and all that stuff. I've seen a couple of them. I wouldn't say I'm like a huge fan of the Batman movies either. Like, I'm not a big comic book movie fan. Like, I'm not really into it. But this movie was a movie. Like, there's no magic stuff in here. This is about real life. It's a powerful, powerful film, and it's really well made, beautiful to watch. It's doing all the things that great art does. I would watch it again and again.
Yeah, I totally agree. I also think that movie was also kind of an interesting IQ test in a way, right? Because if you didn't understand the movie and all its depths, then there may be something you want to figure out about yourself. Maybe you should get educated more and think about these things, right? And for somebody who got it, I think most people got it. I think that even younger people probably got it a lot more than older people. And I think that it speaks to the heart of younger people even more, because younger people are the ones who are going to have to face with all the potential troubles that capitalism is going to bring. And I think it's a great, perfect movie at the right time, right place, right themes, right actor, right comic in this case, even though both of us are not huge fans of comic books. But again, this was a perfect character, Joker done right. I think it's a great movie, and like you said, and I totally agree, it's a modern masterpiece, and I think it's gonna be even relevant even in the future once we see how things unfold. And it's also a great wake-up call, so many good things about it. So do you wanna give it a little grades here?
What do we normally do? 5 stars, right?
So we do from half star to 5 stars. Half star is abysmal, 2.5 stars is average, and 5 stars is excellent, perfect, great, whatever. So this is kind of our rating system.
Well, clearly I'm gonna give it 5 stars. I don't think it could have been done better. I think it's an amazing movie with tons of deep themes, and every scene in it is doing work in terms of plot and archetypes and storytelling, and is beautifully shot. This thing is a masterpiece. Like you said, it's going to be the kind of film that is going to be relevant years into the future, and people are going to be like, have you seen Joker? It's a great addition to the classic films. It might be like the best film of the decade.
I don't know, that's a good question.
What's a better film than
just
than
for
Joker
the year
from
2019
from the decade?
Some people said that I'm gonna watch that movie as well, The Irishman from Martin Scorsese. I don't know how that movie is relevant to our time. I haven't seen it, but let me just give you my grade and then we can continue. So I totally agree with you the same way. I think this was a great movie. Like I said everything before, so I give it 5 stars as well.
If you are listening to this and you have an idea of what might have been a better movie than Joker, please mention it in the comments. If there's anything even close to being considered to be better than Joker, I want to watch it.
And I don't know which movie would be. I mean, the problem is I don't have them all on the mind. I'm sure there were some great movies over the decade, but if I had to pick the first one, I would definitely probably go for Joker. So that's sort of my conclusion here.
Yeah, definitely interested in everyone's thoughts on this video. It's a great one to explore. There's lots to get into. So
and also comment in general if you guys have any questions or you wanna add to something, like maybe we surely did miss something. So if you guys kind of felt like we missed something and should have told and didn't, feel free to comment down below as well.
Thanks again everybody who's listening. If you've made it this far, make sure you like, and if you're not subscribed yet, definitely subscribe. Ring that bell to get more notifications. Support what we're doing on Patreon. We put a lot of time and work into creating this stuff at a high quality for you guys and for you ladies, and we really appreciate all the support we can get. Thanks again for watching. Much love to everybody. Peace.
Peace.